The noise update has been out for a good while now, and I've taken a lot of time to study the ins and outs of each level in his story. So today I'm going to be ranking every level in the Noises campaign. However, because his mode is essentially a new game plus, this ranking video is going to follow a different set of rules than my previous ones. I'm not going to be assessing these levels based solely on how much I like them, but more so on how fresh and unique the noise version feels relative to the Peppino version of the stage. After all, since you have to play through the Pizza Man's campaign first, what really makes the Noises adventure stand out are the things that feel different. Also know that I'm only ranking the platforming levels in this video due to how different they are from the bosses, but I could always rank the noise bosses in a separate video later if this one performs well enough. And obviously I will be spoiling the noise updates levels and story in this ranking, so if you haven't gotten around to playing it yet, then I recommend heading back to this video after you finish. But with all that out of the way, it's time to finally start the ranking proper. So get ready for some noise and sit back because it's whack time!
I'm going to kill you, and then kill you again.
This is the tier for noise level reworks that are such a downgrade compared to the original version that it's a total insult to everything that the Peppino stage accomplished and stood for. And as such, the tier is completely empty. Yeah, Torta Pizza cooked with the vast majority of the noise levels, and none of the tweaks they made to the stages were truly awful in my opinion. I'm glad that the bottom tier has remained consistently empty across every Pizza Tower ranking I've done so far. It's a real testament to this game's level of quality. Here's hoping the C tier will continue to follow suit.
Something's wrong, I can feel it.
What happened here? Gnome Forest had just about every fun gimmick removed from it. The novelty of playing as a different character is gone because you're still the noise. And the challenge presented by the pizza deliveries is gone as well because noise just gets those toppings for free by destroying the customers' houses. On top of that, noise goblins pose no real threat anymore because they just wave at you the whole time. Okay, maybe that last one's a pretty cool Easter egg, but combine it with all the other nerfs I mentioned, and this version of Gnome Forest presents such a tiny fraction of the original level's challenge and charm. If you're not going to give us a different character as a stand-in for Gustavo, that's fine, but at least add something cool and new to the Gustavo levels to make up for it. This one's saved from getting D-tier by the funny new noise cards that replace the Gustavo and Brick Hour, as well as how Noise's different toolkit forces you to consider different options for taking out the countless pickles and pizzards, because this time around you can't just spam the brick kick to take them out before they notice you. But even with those positives, this level's definitely the biggest downgrade in the Noises campaign, and it's not even close. Just remember that I'm ranking how enjoyable these are to someone who's already thoroughly acquainted with the original levels, and is looking for fun new surprises in the update. And within those parameters, the Noises Gnome Forest simply does not stack up to his rival's version in the slightest. Bloodsauce Dungeon didn't really have any significant changes made to it, which I guess makes sense considering it doesn't really have many gimmicks that could be altered in the first place. Even so, it's really far down this list due to not offering much new for veteran players, aside from maybe a bit more frustration than usual. This was always one of the harder stages to P-rank, but considering how Peppino's moveset is much more well suited for controlled vertical movement than Noises is, and Bloodsauce is a primarily vertical level, the relatively low synergy between the character and stage here can lead to some jank. Like when descending the dungeon, it always feels like a gamble whether Noise will wall jump off the slopes or just keep blasting down the horizontal path below. It takes some seriously good utilization of his moveset to not get caught by Pizza Face on lap 2. But in spite of the flaws here, it's still a fun level, so even though the lack of changes put it in the C tier, there's a pretty big gap in terms of the enjoyment I had between this one and Forest. Pizza Scare is in a very similar situation to Bloodsauce in that virtually nothing was changed, but this one's a bit better simply because it doesn't suffer from Dungeon's lack of synergy with Noise, due to Pizza Scare being much more horizontally focused. Since he's such a big fan of just plowing through normally intangible objects and levels, I was kind of hoping Noise would be the one to finally put the Ghost King in his place by killing him at the very end of the level, but no such luck. Even though all three of these C-tier levels are vastly inferior to their Peppino counterparts, that doesn't mean they're bad and that I didn't enjoy them, because I did. They're only C-tier when it comes to being reworks. But with that in mind, it's time we kick things up a notch and head it up to the B-tier.
Okay!
Around these parts, everyone knows the tale.
Fast Food Saloon rounds out our trio of virtually unchanged levels, except this one is placed a tier above the other two because it does actually have two small changes. Noise reclining on the weenie mount is pretty funny, and getting to knock the horsies over is really cathartic considering how cheeky those guys can be during the races. Neither of these changes have any impact on the actual gameplay, but they're still cute little details that add a bit of extra little flavor when speeding back through the Western bar.
Because of my slightly botched laser eye surgery.
Secrets of the World just might have been the trickiest level to place in this entire ranking. Because on the one hand, so many of these secrets are dedicated to movement options, transformations, and gimmicks that work completely differently for Noise than for Peppino, so as such the level feels totally distinct between the two characters. So then, case closed. It's unique, so it's an easy P tier, right? Well, not exactly. The thing is that many of these secrets have much more linear design than the levels they're hidden in. And so when you completely change a gimmick's functionality or a character's kit without making needed alterations to the tight platforming segments of the secrets, some of them are bound to feel janky, if not a bit broken. They're all still perfectly doable, it's just that the level design was very transparently made with Peppino in mind, and it's most notable here in Secrets of the World. I'm sorry to fans of this level, but uniqueness of gameplay will only get you so far if that uniqueness leads to a sometimes bumpy playing experience. The level's still called golf, but maybe boxing would have been more accurate considering what sport Noise is actually trying to play here. It's not a huge change by any means, but it's still a cool little detail. As for the Primo Berg limit being constantly altered so that Noise always gets the most points no matter what, I'm pretty mixed. On the one hand, it removes a bit of the challenge from the level, but on the other, it's pretty funny, in character, and if nothing else, it helps to set this apart from the Peppino version. No birdies or bogeys to be found with this Noise rework, it's definitely par for the course.
Bombs? You want it?
Yes.
Ancient Cheese Bros, we did it again because this is once more the level's best placement in any of my rankings to date. I have no idea how this keeps happening, but to those of you who still haven't invested in Ancient Cheese stocks yet, then buy them immediately because they are always on the rise. Okay, but bit aside, the bomb gimmick in the Noise version of this level is a bit different because instead of throwing the bombs, you have to simply carry the explosives directly to the Stupid Rat, which does shake things up a bit. It's not much, but it's a nice little twist on a gimmick that I was wholeheartedly expecting to go completely unaltered. And for that, Ancient Cheese is going to be our king of the B tier. Now it's time to move on to the Noise reworks that I thought were anywhere from pretty good to great in the A tier.
Good.
Hello, and welcome to the Los Pollos Hermanos family.
Fun Farm is probably a textbook example of how to keep a Noise rework simple but enjoyable. The only change is that Mort is thrown as a projectile instead of doing melee attacks, and this greatly changes the way your character uses the transformation to progress in the level. Should you throw Mort at ground level? Maybe jump first? Or maybe you use your new double jump to gain even more distance before sending Mort out? And what direction should you be facing? All of these considerations could have different implications for Noise than for Peppino, and that's the mark of a well-handled gimmick change for this New Game Plus.
Do a barrel roll!
Ah, good old Crust Cove, a level that's truly near and dear to my heart. What surprises might the Noise version have in store for us here? Well, there's only one new addition really, but it is a good one, and it's that the barrel transformation now moves faster and doesn't rebound off of slopes, instead continuing forward in the original direction you were facing whenever possible. I know I just criticized Secrets of the World for not altering the level design a bit to make some of the sections more intuitive, but I genuinely think the changed barrel gimmick here does a perfect job of spicing up the gameplay despite the platforming clearly not being designed for Noise's take on the transformation. I attribute this at least partially to Crest Cove's geometry being at least a smidge more forgiving than most secrets in the game, since those tend to be littered with bottomless pits. Cove also has like several dozen less gimmicks to keep track of than Secrets of the World. Anyways, initially learning Noise's barrel here at the beach feels exactly like learning Peppino's barrel for the first time, and that was something I loved experiencing in the original stage, so this one really felt like a fun little way to bring me back to the very first playthrough I had of this game in an exciting new way. And what else can I really say? Cove does not miss. In terms of gameplay alterations to John Gutter, it is virtually identical to Peppino's version, but a switch in music can go a long way towards changing a track's atmosphere. And in this stage we have Unearthly Blues swapped out for the Noise's jam-packed Radical Anthem. It's a classic Pizza Tower tune that made its grand return at the best possible moment. And this really was a surprise to everyone, because in the Noise Update preview footage the official Twitter account showed us back in January, the song for this stage was still Unearthly Blues, even though other songs like Distasteful Anchovi and the previously unheard Worldwide Noise were already swapped in. If that isn't the epitome of a fun twist in the new game mode, then I'm not sure what is.
Baby, when you're small.
At the Noise's Pepperbot factory, the new front page news is that instead of getting turned into a pizza box like Peppino, you'll get shrunk down to a teeny tiny size and gain a jetpack which gives you a boost for as long as you can hold the button down. This is another one of those Noise transformations where, while I do appreciate the fact that it plays differently from the original, it does kind of remove a bit of the nuance from a lot of the platforming segments later on in the stage, since you no longer have to worry about many of the obstacles and can just float over them for free. This is especially apparent in the third secret room. But fortunately, there is a bit more to this rework than just the changed power-up. Namely... oh... For real though, Bucket Chan serves a pretty small role in this level, as it just douses a few outlets so Noise can travel through a segment that would normally be borderline impossible with his moveset. But in spite of that, I really appreciate that they went the extra mile to make a clever and cute little solution to this problem. I mean, it even gets its own little TV screen, how adorable is that? If this level had just the shrinking transformation or just the bucket, it would be placed much lower. But with both of them here in Pepperbot, there's quite a good deal of new stuff going on here to shake some of the rust off of this level.
And then there's Chunky! He's dead.
When it comes to peak fiction, or as it's more commonly referred to, don't make a sound, one of the biggest changes is that Noise doesn't get stuck in an animatronic if he's caught by a monster, but instead he just straight up dies and is replaced by another Noise soon after. I think this gag is really funny, and it's even kind of a fun little spin on the ongoing Noise permadeath joke, so it definitely got a chuckle out of me. But of course, the more important change in this level is Peppino's shotgun being swapped out for Noise's minigun, and I was really happy to see this thing return from the boss fight ending cutscene. Looking back, it's a really good thing Noisette stepped in when she did, because if Noise actually got to fire this thing at Peppino, that would have been the end of the Italian man's story right there. I'll yap a bit more about this transformation when we get to the other stage it appears in later on in the list, but for now just know that Don't Make a Sound was a really great first outing for this weapon, even if the controls can be a bit finicky at times. This rework has corpses and weaponized sausages. What more could you possibly ask for? Freezerator is even more Freezerator than it was before, and by that I mean that the level feels clunkier, but is even more of a power trip than the original. This is one that definitely didn't fall into the trap of not changing enough, because the level flow here functions drastically different than with Peppino. Having access to the fire jump right from the start opens up a lot of new routing possibilities, which can lead to some fun exploration as well as a good deal of getting lost if you don't have the whole map memorized. This time around, the Pepper Pizza not only makes you invincible, but also shoots out fireballs that home in on nearby enemies to take them out. This change is visually neat, but it automates a lot of the Pepper Pizza rampage, so it doesn't feel to me like a ton of value is added with that change. I'm saying a lot of negatives here, but this version of Freezerator still definitely spiced things up, and it's very much in the spirit of the original level to have significant flaws and still be a total blast, so that's why it got so high.
Please don't call me fat. I prefer the term.
Pizza's big change is the night suit being a bit more rotund than usual when used by the noise, and as such you no longer stop when you bump into walls but rebound off in the opposite direction. This is the first real transformation to be encountered in the new campaign, and as such the change had to make a good first impression, and it definitely did. Bouncing off of walls uncontrollably at high speeds feels like it really is the noise's idea of a good time, and few levels do a better job of capturing that unbridled chaotic noise energy than this one. Much like how the original Pizzascape got me excited to see what other transformations would come later on in the game, this new take on the level got me excited for all the changes I'd see. Glad this one got the royal treatment like it deserved.
This is good, Vector. That's why it's called war.
War never changes. Or does it? Since Noise is using the minigun for most of this level, speedrunning this thrill ride feels much different from the original War. Whereas Peppino's shotgun is a lot quicker and short range, Noise's weapon is more unwieldy but covers a drastically wider area with its attack. This trade-off, as well as Noise's unique movement options like the tornado and instant super jump, make this stage feel completely distinct even if the layout itself is untouched. You know, I've gotta say, War's really impressing me this time around, and I don't see how things could get much better than this. I stand corrected because replacing Gustavo with Bucket Sama was a really cute touch. And this time around the bucket unironically does help quite a bit, because it'll pop in several times to take out a stray enemy or two, making your run that much easier. Noise is fighting an entirely different war from Peppino here, and I love it.
Versus La Familia de Peppa Pig.
You might be surprised to see such a big gap in my ranking between Gnome Forest and Pig City, but the reason the latter is so much higher is actually pretty simple. Even though Gustavo is still absent and there's no other new playable character to spice up the gameplay here, Noise still manages to put some fun new spins on the gimmicks here in spite of that. Instead of the handcuffs being a hazard, they're closer to being weapons this time around, and I find that pretty hilarious. These cuffs are just not built for restraining the noise. You also have Noise's spin on the rat balloons, where he lets it go straight to his head, literally. This is also a nice reference to his balloon from the boss fight. What really impresses me about the new Pig City though, is just how clever they were with getting around many of the logistical problems this rework presented. For example, how can Noise swing across the rails during this section, which is ordinarily done by Gustavo, if Noise can only skate across rails using his skateboard? Simple. He slaps on a pair of gloves for that very reason halfway through the stage. What about the special strike achievement that involves taking out 3 enemies at once by kicking Brick? How would that work if Gustavo's noble steed is nowhere in sight? Well, the solution is that Brick does briefly appear near the start of pizza time, and Noise can interact with him and still get the achievement with some good timing. And of course you have the hilarious new taxi transition screens where he pulls out a gun on the driver, which is so delightfully in character. Where Gnome Forest fell flat on its face in this campaign, the Pig City proved that it really didn't have to be that way, and that Gustavo levels can still be a total blast with just a single character. I'm just glad that Toy to Pizza went whole hog at reworking this lovable urban hellhole. But now it's time to move on to the S tier as we tackle some truly great reworks, even if this is honestly going to be pretty hard for me to explain, because if you've been keeping track of the levels that I haven't mentioned yet, yeah, this is going to get a little weird, so bear with me.
I'm amazing! I'm not a shopping list. I'm a ghost.
To put it simply, they absolutely nailed the Noise's take on the ghost transformation here in Wasteyard. It still feels every bit as pleasantly slippery as Peppino's ghost, but the caveat that you move slower by default and must press Y to break through objects makes every move feel even more calculated, as you now have to think more in terms of straight lines when traversing using this power-up. I praise the original version of Wasteyard for having one of the most fun transformations in the game, and now the Noise version is getting a high placement for putting a really fun spin on that same ghost mode. Additionally, Noise's gleeful look while corpse surfing is another fun little plus. Not a ton was changed here, but the few bits that were changed are such a slam dunk that this rework ended up being a scarily good time and well deserving of the S tier.
They're the same picture.
4th place already, huh? Wow, we're really getting pretty high up in the ranking. I wonder what levels Wait, no, that can't be right. There's gotta be something I missed in my notes that can explain this. Hold on a minute, let me check. Alright y'all, here are my notes, and as we can see here, we got the Pig City, and it's basically all the stuff I already talked about. The balloon transformation, it's a reference to the boss fight, the handcuffs are weapons now, the new gloves for the rail section, the brick cameo, and the taxi transition with the gun. Yeah, I got a lot of notes here for Pig City, and it's pretty much everything I mentioned. Moving on to Wasteyard, we got the ghost transformation. It handles really differently, and it spiced up the gameplay for a really large chunk of the stage. We got the new sprite for the corpse surfing. There's a lot of information to work with here. And we got, what? That's not supposed to be in there. But moving on to Oregano Desert, we got, the Firemouth is floatier. That's nothing. That gives me nothing to work with. This didn't help at all. Alright, so the notes were a complete bust. I don't know what to do now. I'd have to bump Oregano back down to like B tier or something, right? So I apologize for that. I guess let's move on to number 3. Okay, but actually the real reason why this stage is at number 4 is because even though so little was changed, the layout presented by this level has really great synergy with the Noise's moveset. I don't think it's a coincidence that Oregano Desert was so prominently featured in the very first teaser trailer for the Noise update, because this one is just insanely fun to fool around with when it comes to this character's wall bounces and tornado spins, due to the many corridors that are the perfect width and height for some epic skateboarding action. I mean, look at this section right here. It's smooth like butter and just feels incredibly satisfying to maneuver through. Additionally, even if the floatier movement with the Firemouth transformation doesn't feel like a huge change, what I do really like about it is the funny new sprites of the Noise with a comically large flame coming out of his mouth, all while gluttonously running around with a fork and wanting even more. All things considered, this level is basically the polar opposite of Blood Sauce Dungeon. Neither really changed all that much when moving from Peppino to the Noise's campaign, but the latter is just exponentially more well suited for the Yellow Gremlins toolkit. I'd rather play this one through as Noise over the Italian Man any day of the week, and that's a sure sign that this rework deserved a scorching hot S tier. But the time has finally come to move on to the cream of the crop Noise reworks. These ones were changed in ways that were so beneficial that they're not only fresh takes on the original levels, they practically revolutionized the gameplay these stages had to offer. In fact, out of respect for these reworks, I'm going to be using their original stage music during their reviews. So without further ado, let's kick off the top 3 as we enter the P tier.
Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the one.
It's time to blast!
Of course, the stage about a giant building being destroyed feels like it's been totally rebuilt from the ground up, even if none of the layout is actually different. There's so much that's been changed here that I hardly know where to begin. Obviously, the many gimmicks and transformations that this level reintroduces have been changed to be the Noises version, and that alone makes the experience feel very different. Since none of these sections are quite as challenging as Secrets, this one didn't fall into the trap of having level design that's too tailor-made for Peppino, as all of Noises' spin on level elements like the minigun and anti-grav olive still fit very naturally into the layout. That's all well and good, but my favorite change to this level has to be how all of the NPCs you normally rescue as Peppino just get obliterated by the noise. It really is one of the best scenes in the game at showing the difference in mentality between the two rivals. Peppino is willing to go back and save his former enemies from dying in the tower's explosion, while Noise couldn't care in the slightest because all he needs are his girl and his minion. It's both hilarious and a great character moment. And if all those changes somehow weren't enough, the cherry on top of it all is the change in music, as Peppino's Bye Bye There is swapped out for I Need a Noise, a rare lyrical song in the soundtrack which is apparently sung by the Noise himself. Now, this new song might not be quite as good as the original, but I mean, come on, it's Bye Bye There. It's virtually impossible to top. And I Need a Noise is still a wonderful song. It goes for a bit more of a nostalgic vibe in place of the former's triumphant energy. The Noises campaign really was an incredibly fun time, and I couldn't have been happier to see it end on a bang.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism.
The returning viewers know that I was just biding my time, waiting for another chance to gas this stage up, and the noise rework definitely gave me the perfect opportunity to do just that. There may be only 2 changes here, but they are both impactful and well-executed alterations. First up, you have the rocket transformation, in which Noise does what any logical person would do when confronted with a weapon of mass destruction. He swallows it whole. This has gotta be one of the funniest and most clever spins on a transformation in the entire game. And it's not just for show either, because Noise's outer layer of skin acts as a shield that prevents the rocket from making direct contact with whatever objects Noise crashes into while in this state. So instead of exploding when hitting a wall, you just bounce off in the opposite direction. The way this change affects the gameplay is really clever because now instead of looking out for nearby horizontal surfaces you can use to turn around, it's the vertical surfaces you need to keep an eye on if you want to successfully ping-pong Noise to wherever your objective is. And then you have the anti-gravitational olives, which retain all of their basic functionality from Peppino's campaign, but have the newly added feature of vertical controls that allow you to speed up or slow down how fast the olive rises. The default speed of Noise's olives are also slower than Peppino's, which is a clever way to encourage experimentation with the pace of the rising. This change takes an already novel gimmick and quite literally adds a lot of new depth to it. Both the rocket and olive are such prevalent gimmicks in this stage that the gameplay feels totally revitalized, and as an avid fan of Deep Dish 9, I couldn't be happier with this. Of course, the little transition screen of Noise losing it during the space shuttle ride is the cherry on top of it all. Put everything together and yeah, this is definitely my favorite Noise level in the whole game. But we're not here to rank the levels based on how much I outright like them. We're here to rank them based on how enjoyable they are relative to their original versions. In other words, I'm basically assessing the levels to see which one had the most value added. And in that regard, Deep Dish 9 is going to have to settle for a very honorable silver medal, because there was a level that more than earned its top spot on the podium. And that level is...
All I do is win, 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 no matter what.
You already knew first place was going to the only stage in the game where they actually changed the layout. Yeah, tutorial, let's go! Okay, the bit's over. Now can the real number 1 please stand up?
Oh, Lord. Somebody.
Yeah, I too was pretty surprised that the sewer level of all things managed to come out on top. But this one just hits in a totally different way than it ever did before. There are 3 major changes to Oh Shoot, and the first one is that instead of becoming a cheese monster, you turn into a cheese rat, and this allows you to scale up walls by pressing up or down, whereas Peppino would have to commit to a jump to gain any sort of height. Next up, you have the strong water currents, known for sending the Italian man flying in a single direction, while Noise pulls out a surfboard so he's free to fight against the current as he pleases. Last but certainly not least, you have the rideable garbage pants, which are ordinarily a blast to ride around on as Peppino, but the change they made here is pretty ingenious because Noise gets shot straight up in a burst of garbage with no lid in sight, which means you actually get to spend some time doing normal Noise platforming in sections where you'd never get a chance to just move around like usual in the base campaign. Really neat how they basically added value by subtracting content. I really think this is pretty much one of the only gimmicks in the game where that twist would have worked. The one thing that all three of the new changes to this level have in common is that they allow for more freedom of movement, which takes an already fun labyrinthine stage and adds even more room for exploration. And it's precisely because these three gimmicks were altered in a way that creates a ton of synergy between them all that no other Noise rework spices up the gameplay to the same degree that Oh Shoot does. When it comes to having fun new surprises in the New Game Plus, you couldn't ask for a better number 1 than number 2. Well, there it is. Every single Noise rework ranked based on how much better they feel compared to their original versions. Keep in mind that this is all just my own opinion, and if you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you like this video and want to see me make more Pizza Tower videos like this in the future, then you can show your support for free by liking the video and subscribing. And don't forget to hit the bell, so you get notified when a new video releases. I already have a pretty good idea of what my next Pizza Tower video will be about, but let me know if you have any other suggestions for PT rankings you'd like to see. And if you're new here and want to watch more of my rankings right now, then boy have I got a playlist just for you. But with that, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.